All right, welcome back to now episode 15. How are you doing,
Woohoo!
Jeff?
I'm great. How are you, Kristen?
I am so good. Tomorrow is Friday.
The week just flew by. The year is flying by because tomorrow's not just Friday, but Friday, May 1st. My wife's middle name is May. And
Uh,
so for the last 5 years, she thinks it's ridiculous, but I love her. For the last 5 years, May 1st is Lindsay May Day. And
I
so,
love it. Do you like do
yeah.
a celebration or?
Yeah, I get her something and we go somewhere special. I have an event tomorrow night at Disneyland. So darn, we're going to go to Disneyland for Lindsay May Day.
Shoot, it must be really hard to be married to Dr. Disneyland, man.
Yeah, it's a
Poor
tough
thing.
gig. I know. It's pretty awful.
And
But yeah, you wrote on what might well be my favorite fun fact about
mm,
Main Street. And it's one of those details that I think once you hear it, you're like so blown away by it that you then start going down the curiosity rabbit hole of, well, what else is there? Right.
yeah,
So again, Walt most wanted to be remembered as a storyteller. He built Disneyland for the purpose of telling stories. He was accustomed to telling those stories vis-a-vis movies in Hollywood. And so as you're walking down Main Street, whether coming in or going out, the credits have to roll, right? And
absolutely.
so he used the windows on Main Street to give credit to the people who helped make his impossible dream for Disneyland possible. Take it from there.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that I will admit I've taken it for granted for so many years as I would stroll down Main Street. You've got your weenie at the end, which is the beautiful castle. And we just tend to rush right by, kind of like what we do in life, right? We're just in
Hmm.
such a hurry to get to the next thing that a lot of times we miss some of the most magical moments that are happening right before our very eyes. And if you just slow down and take a look to your left or the look to your right, you're going to see that each window tells its own story, and not just a fabricated fictional story, but stories of real people that made a real difference and a lasting legacy within the Walt Disney Company. And you'll see artists and animators and Imagineers and people that physically helped build the park or maybe helped finance the park. And one of my favorite windows that I look for all the time, right when I walk in, is of course the famous window above the firehouse, which is Walt's apartment. Now, that apartment window does not have anything transcribed on the glass per se, but for those of you that are not aware, there's always a light that's on inside Walt's apartment. And it's just kind of a reminder to everyone that his spirit still lives within. So the light will always be shining. But if you keep walking down past the Emporium, right up on the top there, you're going to see Walt Disney's own father had his own window. I think it's safe to say they probably had a pretty complicated relationship. And
A
I'm
little
sure we'll talk
bit.
more on that in June for Father's Day. But I just think that it's special because it just reminds you of the humanity, I think, kind of Walt. Like he was someone's son, he was a little kid. And I just think that's neat. But the focus of my article this past week, though, wasn't necessarily on his dad, but on Tom Nabby, who was Disneyland's very first Tom Sawyer, and talk about the epitome of the Four Cs. Jeff, I couldn't believe it. His story is just incredible.
Well, it's crazy. And Tom is a Disney legend, and of course he has his window on Main Street. And it's a reminder of how important it is to give credit to the people who get us to where we want to be. We can't do it alone. And
Right.
Walt knew that. I love to tell people Walt may well have been the world's greatest HR director because he hired so well.
Yeah.
He wasn't a particularly great animator. He could draw, but he wasn't fantastic. And so the success of Mickey Mouse is of iWorks. And the only attraction single-handedly designed by Walt Disney himself is, ironically enough, Tom Sawyer Island. But the rest came from this amazing, talented pool of Imagineers who went to work for WED in 1952 and beyond. And Walt recognized that Disneyland doesn't happen if not for their gifts, talents, and abilities. And Disney has
Yeah.
kept that tradition going. And it's a wonderful reminder. I tell leaders all the time, measure your week by how many thank you notes you write. I call them
Mm.
windows on Main Street.
I love it.
because, we go to the park and we're like, "That's amazing. Wow. Look at that." And we ignore the bigger lesson of, yeah, stop and write a note and let people
Right.
know how much we appreciate them and how much we value them. And not just once, but on a very regular basis.
Absolutely. And I think, of all the people that are deserving of a window on Main Street, I was so happy to see that Tom Nabby, of course, got his because going back to the tie into the Four Cs, talk about a teenager with guts, right? He had the confidence. He had the courage. He had the resiliency and the constancy. Walt didn't hire him on the spot after Tom went to him and said, "Hey, look, my name's Tom. I'm about the same size. We look a lot alike. I'm your guy." And it wasn't a love at first sight. It took some convincing. And if anybody had a reason or an excuse to just call it quits and say, "Yeah, well, who was I kidding? What was I thinking?" Which I think so many of us do when it comes to our dreams. We hit one little road bump and we're like, "That's it. It wasn't meant to be. I knew I couldn't do it." And we throw in the towel, but not Tom Nabby. And he
Nope.
ended up turning 50-cent ticket turned into basically a 50-year career with the Walt Disney Company
Yeah. And
because
that's
he
the
showed up
only
and
time he's ever had to buy a ticket to get into a Disney park. I think that's amazing.
oh, he's got it made.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good, good
Well,
stuff.
your article I thoroughly enjoyed because it took me right back to being a little kid in the news, sitting in the Captain EO theater, trying to reach out and grab those aliens. And I felt the thunder of the seats. And I had never seen anything as cool as that theater show. So thank you for taking all of us back in time. So, yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, I love music and I love going to concerts, and they've been doing a great job bringing music films to the big screen lately.
Mhm.
Saw Bruce Springsteen late last year, might have been earlier this year. I don't remember exactly. Several others, and I knew that Michael Jackson was coming, and oh, I was so excited. Not that I grew up a huge Michael Jackson fan. I've always enjoyed his music and I've always appreciated his music, but I'm just a little too white to be a huge Michael Jackson fan,
Ugh.
if I'm being completely honest.
I'm just trying to picture you doing the moonwalk right now.
Yeah, there's not much to picture there. But just this idea of going back to, the late 70s and the early 80s.
Yeah.
And, what it was like when he was everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. And this is pre-internet. This is pre-social media. There was no
True.
escaping Billie Jean. There was no escaping Beat It. There was no escaping Thriller. And I like those time machines, right? And a chance to remember, a different time and a different place. And then, Captain EO. And
Mm,
what an amazing attraction, and, when Eisner came in 1984, he recognized really early, the studio is struggling, the parks are doing great, but the parks rely on stories that come from the studio, and if the studio
right.
is struggling, it's gonna take us a while to get that fixed, so what can we do in the interim to make sure the parks keep going? And so he comes up with the Videopolis, and then he does partnerships with Michael Jackson and Francis Ford Coppola, and then George Lucas and Star Tours, and ultimately, Paramount and Indiana Jones, and just a great time to be a Disneyland fan and see those attractions come to life. And as much as I love to talk about hating my first trip to Disneyland, which is true, but it's also sort of a curiosity hook, right? Because people aren't expecting that.
Right.
There were some good things that I have from that day, and one of those memories, and I was reminded of this when I saw the Michael movie over the weekend, was Captain EO. And
Mm,
one of the things the film does, and I encourage everyone to go see it, is it also reminds us how much Michael Jackson was into Disney. I mean, Mickey Mouse is all over that
right.
film. T-shirts and sweatshirts all over that film. Probably one of my favorite scenes is from Michael Jackson's bedroom, and I love attraction posters. There's an attraction poster of Space Mountain in Michael Jackson's bedroom,
Right. Your
and this is
favorite
a
ride.
this is a few years before he's going to have his own attraction next to Space Mountain at Disneyland. It's
That's
just
so cool.
so stinking Cool. And it's also a reminder, and I'm gonna kind of pick at Disney here. What are they doing in the Magic Eye Theater now?
Yeah.
Nothing. Same thing they're
Yep.
doing with the People Mover track.
Right.
Nothing. The same thing they're doing with the Carousel of Progress building.
Right.
Nothing. So
I
come
know.
on, like people loved that stuff. So don't let it just sit there dormant. Bring it back. Do
I
it.
would love to see them bring back Captain EO with all of the technology that we have now. I mean, what a great time to do
Oh,
that, especially with the movie
yeah.
coming out right now. Great publicity. Every single time I'm in the park and I'm walking up that beautiful ramp on my tired legs to go up to Space Mountain, I think of Captain EO every single time.
How could
Every
you
single
not?
time. I know.
Yeah.
It's missed greatly by so many
Yeah.
people, and the feedback that you've gotten from our readers this week on it, I mean, it's not localized here. I think everybody has a connection to it. You don't have to be a fan of Michael Jackson to still be a fan of Captain EO and what they were able to do, like you said, in the 80s and 90s. It's just
Yeah.
nostalgic. It's history. It's
Yep.
awesome.
And it's also a reminder, because Lindsay's younger, so she doesn't have the good memories of Michael Jackson.
Sure.
She remembers the Michael Jackson who was weird and a lot of controversy in the early
Right.
2000s. When Michael Jackson died in June of 2009, they brought Captain EO back.
Yeah.
And the last time I saw it wasn't at Disneyland in Anaheim. It was actually Disneyland Paris when I was there for Christmas in December of 2010 because they
Oh
were
my
still
word.
doing the tribute showing after his death. So I just, and again, I have no idea what it would take to get that into the theater for a little while,
Right.
but can you imagine how popular that would be?
Well, I would
Unbelievable.
just yeah, I was just thinking, as you were saying that, I don't know if they'd wanna do it annually for, the anniversary of his death, or maybe, like, every 5 years, something that we can kinda look forward to, even if it was an overlay of type. I wanna
Yeah.
see it. I wanna
We
see it.
went from Captain EO to Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, which was cool, to now Honey, I've Shrunk the Park because we keep taking stuff out and we don't put anything back. Put back Captain EO.
Please, we need to make T-shirts and mugs, a whole new merch line. We will not
And if you can't go see Captain EO, go see Michael. And there's a part two, which I think is super interesting as well.
love it. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you real soon.